Hello. I'm gonna make the camera straight. I was gonna read a poem and start the stream with a poem. And then I said hello and adjusted the camera. So it goes. Um, I didn't title this. Naturally. I can speak with the voice of a falling leaf, an imperceptible rustle, a tired sigh. I can speak with gravity through currents, between stillnesses, and over everything. But here I am, speaking like you. Presently untitled poem by me. Welcome, hello. Hi, Nikki. Hi, Do. Hello, friends. I'm not analyzing any poems today. I don't think. That it seems like something I don't want to do. And I don't know where that leaves me, right? But I figure I can just yap because I want to be live and I want to be hearing my own voice articulating the maelstrom within. um, so here I am. Here I am live without the shield of someone else's poetry. I mean, maybe we'll read some things just lightly in between, but it's just me and it's just yapping. Philosophy, huh? I mean, I figure most of the times when I just yap, it kind of realms into it realms. Sure, it realms into philosophy. It it goes into the realm of philosophical discussion often on this channel. So I figure if I allow it into the title, then it perhaps provides context on the potential and eventual tangents that we will tangent along. Good morning, Do. Good morning. It is a good morning. I woke up early today. I woke up early because I stayed up late and I knew that I needed to wake up early to force myself to rectify my sleep, which usually happens by the midway point in the week, at which point Friday comes around and the band has a show and then it gets fucked up again and I have to start all over. So that's what's up. I wrote a poem this morning, so that's a good morning. I wrote two poems even. One was the one that I read at the start. One is something else. It's short as well. It's called, what was it called? I'll just read it. Surely. Surely as in to be sure, not Shirley as in a hypothetical person named Shirley. This one's kind of, I'll read it. I am a rotting log. A fungus moved in today and eats me from inside. I watch it grow and become the color of me. It does so quickly. 10 pounds. Where did it go? Some into the air, spore-like, some into the ground. I'm becoming the ground. Then, am I growing? Surely not. Surely, I am a rotting log. Obviously, lots of nature between those two poems. I think nature helps me survive as a human most days and most times, because the world often seems arbitrary and silly, and then I remember that a rock just exists as a rock, and a leaf just falls from the tree without any sort of thought to that action, to that uh, uh, sort of undertaking. Trees just grow, dogs just be dogs and bark and eat food and stuff. And birds just like chirp and make nests. And humans have this horrible capacity to like doubt um, action and to believe in something like beyond it, and it messes everything up. Uh, and I find that I'm usually like in my best state of mind when I'm just doing things, doing things like a leaf would. Um, I can speak, and the other poem started, I can speak with the voice of a falling leaf. And that gets hard sometimes to remember, I think, because the world doesn't really like work in that way. I don't think. I mean, it's frustrating that I tend to think that way, and I tend to be caught up with these ideas, and then the world doesn't isn't conducive to people who are like falling leaves or something. Um, that means autistic, I think. I love it. Such a relatable piece. Thank you. Sup y'all? Sup Ray? Sup Ray? How's it going? Um, Man, it's been a long time since I've just streamed to like speak, just to like exist and vibe. This is truly something that has begun to feel foreign. And I think that's quite interesting because to speak out loud in this way, to just talk, to chat, and kind of yap and whatever is like an expression of my own thoughts and my own state and my own being. Whereas like reading people's poetry is like souped up reaction content where I just like look at a thing and all I have to do is like verbalize the thoughts in my head that happen as a reaction to it, right? Um, and that isn't really like talking about myself. I mean, it implies things about myself. It demonstrates things about me or who I might be or how I might think, right? But to just talk, to just like fill the airwaves, is is entirely different, right? It says, I'm just gonna like speak my mind and talk about things and like I guess put that out. I mean, I don't know. Um, I was gonna say I guess like package that in a way that could be like engaging or entertaining to a viewer, but at the same time, like that's usually not a helpful construct of mine to like try to create something entertaining, to try to speak in a way that others might like. I mean maybe that's that poem again, right? And that's the issue. One of the issues I've been facing in my life. I can speak with the voice of a falling leaf, an imperceptible rustle, a tired sigh. I can speak with gravity through currents between stillnesses and over everything. But here I am, speaking like you. Right. And I mean, I guess that's me explaining my poem in some capacity. And I know I don't like when people explain their poems, so I'm not going to like fully make that last connection. But like you, what does that mean to speak like you? Who is you? I think is the important thing in that poem. You don't need to like do everything to entertain us. Yeah, right? It's sort of silly, and one can probably just go on like the live stream and be oneself and exist and vibe, and like that's okay and that's cool. Um and yeah, I don't know. And I can just yap. Hi, Callie. You and Nikki both on 10 stream watch streaks, which is kind of crazy cuz like uh one, I just like stream at random times sometimes. So the fact that you always pop in is kind of impressive. Two, I don't know. Of 10 streams in a row, it's like consistent. Going to a poetry congress and everyone is explaining their poems before reading it out. Dude, when people do that, it feels so like unconfident to me. And it's not that like I specifically have a problem with the action, but it almost always evokes to me like, so this poem's about like this thing and this thing and this thing, and it's like it says I don't believe that my poem can um is going to communicate the thing I want it to, so I'm going to tell you what it's going to communicate first to prime you to do so, right? um and and that's like probably not like a great like performance tool. I mean, that's why you see like the slam poets, and I think slam poets are incredibly impressive. um they'll just go on the stage, they'll just take the mic and boom, they're into it. There's no explanation because I mean that's how slams work. The timer starts as soon as they start reading. But like the slam poem specifically has to be concise and effective and punchy in a way to communicate broadly to many people, to appeal to many, because like even based on the slam structure, like the judges are chosen from the audience. It's like random, not necessarily poet type people who are evaluating those works. So that's very impressive, and I think those of us who strictly write, or who write more than we perform, which includes me, writing more on the page than I do reading out loud, I think it's those people that tend to struggle with that, right? They're just not practiced, so that makes sense. Yeah, I didn't like performing my poetry for a long time. And that feeling of like speaking something out there and reading it and it just not being received, or it kind of like falling onto those deaf ears, is a pretty like uncomfortable thought when one is like maybe putting time and effort into performance. And I mean, that being said, like it starts to open up the question of like, why are you reading the poem, why are you performing, what is the point of art, blah 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 blah. And uh that's about as helpful as, I don't know, a very heavy object in your hands while you're trying to not drown in the ocean. um yeah, it's hard to preface with audience vulnerability, and then it's hard to preface with audience vulnerability, and then escalate, because it usually comes off as unprepared. I feel like I'm not constructing those words inside my brain correctly to like understand what you're saying with that sentence. But yes comes off as unprepared, right? The preface thing, if that's what you mean. Even the readings I do are faceless. I just use a graphic. Yeah, and I mean that's, oh, I write ambiguously on purpose, even the readings I do. Okay, I mean that's pretty cool, right? That your personal performance, your sort of features aren't betraying anything about your poem. That's kind of a cool way to write. Um, but acting without preparation is fun. Oh, I agree. I mean that's why I love the improvisatory art and doing like the saxophone looping stuff and like the sort of stream of consciousness, the word association, arguably improvised poetry, if you want to call it that. Uh, I think that stuff is brilliantly fun because it throws any of that preparation, any of that to the side, and then now all that I'm doing at that point is like being in that moment, and that's what I crave. Like as a person who's in my own head and critical all the time, is like a way to be so entirely in a moment of creation, of art, of experience, of nature, whatever, that like the thoughts are gone, right? Head clearing kind of thing. And like preparation is the opposite. Preparation is like iteration and thought and intention. But it's strange because I'm somewhat drawn to intention, and I'm also somewhat drawn to impulse, but like maybe they're like similar. Maybe they like horseshoe around. I'm not sure. A poem is not an essay or a puzzle in the matter of poetry. There are no answers, nor ends or beginnings. There's expectations, as Armando Uribe would say. How do you just like have quotes like this? It's like, how do you have quotes like this just like in the chamber always? Like we're always staring down like a 6-shooter of Latin American poet and essayist, quotes loaded and ready to fire into chat. The threat is always present with Ray. You can't raise the fourth wall. To perform well, you can only lower it with intention, if that makes sense. You do sound like a theater teacher when you say it like that. You can't raise the fourth wall. You can only lower it with intention. Oh, so if you're sort of unintentionally lowering the fourth wall, then like, if it's not an effective choice to lower the fourth wall, then you're just doing something detracting from your own performance. That's a nice sort of elegant way to put it. I don't know, my brain is just like that. Yeah, I guess it seems so. I've realized that I do everything with an empty head, no thoughts behind my eyes. I mean, it's an appealing way to live, right? Raise a resonant quote machine, yes. Hello, Sleepy Librarian, welcome. Yeah. Yeah, so this is like, all of that is my sort of plight lately. Always, maybe, this idea of intention, acting intentionally. If redeemed for me to stretch. Acting intentionally and carefully and slowly, and then how that relates to like acting like freely and intuitively, and whether these things can coexist or not, is one of these like massive questions that keeps me up at night, that I've been, puzzling over. I think that's a great question to ask of someone. What keeps you up at night? You get sort of fascinating and varied answers that I think say a lot about people, right? Like, and even just like whatever comes to people's minds, what keeps you up at night? Like, for some people, it jumps first to to relationships, or to big philosophical questions, or spiritual things, or their art making, or mundane little moments of life. I don't know if anyone has like compelling. I mean, all answers to that question are probably compelling. They're all interesting. Why? I'm sorry, that was my my brain's only thought for today. I mean, why is one of the better thoughts to be having, right? The impulse to to question and to ask, because that's the impulse that gives us a chance to understand things more accurately, right? More precisely. More so if you start with it down, you lose some presence with the fourth wall down. I see. That makes sense. And there's also an aspect even of like, I need to not fidget with things. I mean, I'm fine to fidget with things, but like, oh, I'll get my orbs. My orb. Yeah, I mean, some people walk onto stage and like somehow the fourth wall is already down. Um, like, like I think every moment, like once the audience's eyes are on you, is part of that performance, and it like performing takes a lot of care, a lot of intention. So like it's understandable why people suck at it a lot, and I suck at it. Like we all like it's very hard. um, our town is some of the best lowering of the fourth wall in existence. I'm not familiar with our town. You can absolutely intentionally have it down, but you better be prepared and ready to surprise the hell out of your audience to grab their attention back. I see. I don't know what lowering the fourth wall means. My room has four walls, and if we lowered one of them, there would be a trap. Deadpool and She-Hulk both have ignores the fourth wall as a superpower. Yeah. um, Not that I'm personally into. I'm not really into superhero stuff personally. It. I don't know. I never vibed with the sort of certainly like the power thing. Um just like the idea of having powers beyond human powers. I don't usually find that to be very compelling, and maybe that's because I'm like obsessed with like my own sort of human condition. Um that all of that's sort of extraneous. I think it's a Jay-Z reference or something like that. Some review of the series The Wire, and they said something about the fifth wall, and I've been like, what the fuck is the fifth wall? Y'all are silly. Man, I can really just we really live in a world where I can like open my computer and I can put a camera on my face and I can go live. And it's so absurd to me always, like the fact of streaming and doing this and like existing in front of people without existing in front of people, this sort of like non-reality where my actions are in fact reflected out into the world, and simultaneously they are not me, like really at all, because it's just this twinkling screen reflected back in the eyes of other people, and then like those people like are just like these chat messages that appear, and I look at them and like it gives my like ancient reptilian brain. I love Disco Elysium. I finished Disco Elysium the other day. Gives my ancient reptilian brain um, just like a little bit of satisfaction, as if someone's talking to me. Right? Like it's strange. It's like this horrifying mollusk. I don't know why I said mollusk, but it's like a mollusk. It's a surrogate. I don't know what mollusks have to do with it. The word just popped into my head. Maybe because I was reading something about Moloch and Ginsberg's Howl the other day, and Moloch sounds like mollusk. Mollusk. What's a mollusk? That's like oysters and stuff? Are crabs mollusks? Are crabs... Are lobsters mollusks? I feel like that's just like something I should know, and I feel like incredibly blindsided by the fact that I can't pin down in my brain exactly what falls into the definition of mollusk. It's a fun word, isn't it? Mollusk. Mollusk. Right? That's a nice sound. It's a nice mouth feel. Mouth feel has a nice mouth feel as well. One of those convenient words. Mollusk, the molluscoid mouth feel of meandering, mm, out of M words. Ran out. The theater kids be like, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down the fourth wall. So that those of you who don't know, back in Colt, that's crazy. Moist is pretty good, right? Okay, snails, clams, squid, octopus, soft. Oh, crabs and stuff are crustaceans. That's right. Snails are mollusks. I like snails. Except when I was a child, I'm haunted by the memory. This is like a true like core memory of mine, that I still think about fairly frequently. As I was like a child, um, and I'm like standing outside in the backyard of the house that I live in Utah, lived in, and I'm like, I must be like 6 or 7 years old, 8 years old. I don't know. Definitely younger than 9. I'm probably 5 or 6 actually. Um, and and there's this snail on the ground, and I kind of like I'm standing there. It's a gray day. It's a very gray day, and it's kind of unpleasant. And there are these like I don't know what the kind of tree is, but they're evergreen, but they're not like pine trees. They're the ones that grow very very thin and tall, right? Um, they don't get like super tall, but they're like a very narrow vertical evergreen that doesn't like stretch its branches out very much. Anyway, so I'm standing there under these trees. The house is on the other side of me, and I see the snail on the ground, and the snail is just vibing along as snails do, and I'm like watching it for some time, and and then I just like step on this snail, boom, step on the snail. Snail's dead, you know. Snail's dead forever. Um, and I mean I made an enemy of the mollusks that day. Not that I don't like them. I really like them. Maybe it's sort of like a guilty conscience. But I think that's like that just sticks out to me as just like such a horrible thing. Like the innocence of a child, and the lack of knowledge to just like destroy something beautiful, uh, is very like it's simultaneously like pure in some capacity, that this like I didn't really know what I was doing, right? And then it's also like horrifying. And um I mean, I think it maybe speaks to that idea of like blissful ignorance, that it didn't bother me at the time. It's just like a snail, right? Um, and then now I think about it all the time. As this snail that I just kind of killed. Yeah, that's my mollusk. I wrote a poem about it at one point, but it wasn't really about that. Like I was trying to write about the snail, and I ended up writing about snails in another context. And it was sort of this poem set in a concrete thought palace of a dystopian city, and there was like a snail for some reason. Very like stream of consciousness kind of thing. Um, I don't know. I don't remember what it's called. Uh anyway, so but I feel like that's like something that I don't know like why that sticks in my head so much. Maybe it's like the destruction of you know something, not knowing, or like to be victimized without an understanding, to have one's life like snap out of existence in a moment and go from perceiving to non-perceiving. Um, at the hands of something that doesn't even like know, it can just accidentally. It's just very like um it's just like, I don't know, it's like the core of my existential thoughts. Maybe not the core, but it's part of the giant web, the giant web that I am caught in of my own thoughts, that I try to understand as I'm pinned down to a particular moment in it by listening to the vibrations of things that are growing ever further away as time spins the web onward into my limited eternity. 6'7"? Yeah, I did say 6'7". Uh, uh, Snail. Okay, mollusks. That's okay. They have to have a mantle and muscle foot thingy. Okay, that gotcha. See you do. Mahogany. That's a nice word. Mahogany. Mahogany. It has a different feel than mollusk. Mollusk like lands, right? Mollusk and mollusk, right? Mahogany, mahogany, right? It has this like mahogany. It's not as round. Mahogany, and maybe it's just longer, that it propels forward, that um it's more mahogany versus mollusk. How would I describe these two words? And of course, they're wrapped up in the associations of the meanings of them, which is okay. That's like sort of inherent that we connect those things. Right, mollusk. It sort of ends in the same place it begins with this closing, but it opens into all, right? All mollusk, right? It's swirly, right? It kind of has that snail shell feel to it. And it's soft, and mahogany is soft. It has the g in it, which I think gives it a little bit more punch, a little bit more presence, right? Like like you notice mahogany more than you notice mollusk. Except mollusk is sort of an uncommon word, so that one might stick out. They're both uncommon words. Sometimes I feel like the best mouthfeel is often in words that are less common, and maybe it's just because they have this capacity to be noticed outside of normal spoken conversation, because they pique the interest through being uncommon and they're being scarce, right? Mahogany, mahogany. And it's open at the end. I don't know. Mollusk is easier to describe than maha. It's just me stimming stream. Milk is a nice word, but remember, I'm lactose intolerant. Milk? You like the word milk? It's definitely short. I think I gravitate to the multisyllabic sort of situations in our language. Milk. It's okay. Can't be 5 feet within milk, otherwise I turn into the milkman. King Yama. I don't know who King Yama voices. Mahogany. For anyone here who knows how Hinduism works, is everything just Shakti? If you told me what Shakti is, I could think about it. Not through a Hindu theological lens, but through a philosophic, metaphysical lens. I recognize that word Shakti, but I don't remember what it means. I'll be thinking about the walrus and the carpenter all day now. I'm not sure what that is either. I'm turning drink milk, turn white. Sure. I've been taught to dislike snails because I'm a farm boy. I mean, that makes sense, right? Like, I don't have that reason. I like them. I think they're cool. But I think I like most animals because they just go about their business without consciousness, and I find that admirable. At the end of Disco Elysium, a video game that I just finished. I won't say it because I don't want to spoil it for Nikki because I know that you're playing Disco and you're probably not done with the game yet. Um, you have a chance to like talk to a creature that is not human, uh, and it tells you how much it admires the fact that you are a human because you deal with the weight of consciousness and guilt and love and feeling. Um, and that was extremely beautiful, beautiful part of the game. Um, I remember snails. I remember salting them. I no longer salt them. Yeah. See, that's kind of. I wouldn't want to be salted if I was a snail. That's straight up like the story of Violent J from the Insane Clown Posse. He and his brother accidentally killed a butterfly, and since then he always references that, going, "This one is for the butterfly." Man, that's beautiful. I I do. I haven't listened to really any Insane Clown Posse, but I know that they're pretty legendary, and I probably could find value. I mean, there's value to be found within a lot of art, at least some art. I mean, it depends. It's like an outlook thing, right? Maybe we get to decide that. Melancholy. Are we just saying melancholy? The "k" doesn't do it for me there in melancholy. I still stand by defenestrate being the best word to have ever existed. Everyone should look up its origin. Yeah, so to throw out a window, right? Defenestrate. Um, I mean it's fun, right? It's a fun word and a fun definition. Uh, Defenestrate. I'm not familiar with the etymology, but Highbroken PH Meeper changed to Meeper from meter. I think that's dope. The Walrus and the Carpenter is Lewis Carroll about the walrus and carpenter who convinces a bed of baby oysters to follow them out of the ocean and then eat them. That's dope. Google the first defenestration of Prague. It might crash my stream. I guess I can do it on my iPad. The first the I'll get there. The first defenestration Prague. Killing of several members of the city council by a crowd of Czech Hussites. The Hussy. The Czech defenestrations of Prague. So there were multiple. 1419. Killing of several members of the city council. Town members refused to exchange their Hussite prisoners while they were marching. That's dope. They threw people out a window. And then they kept doing it. They kept doing it over and... Wow. Dude, that's so dope. Prague is real like that. Autopoiesis. That's a nice word. A Chilean made that one. Of course you would say that. Autopoiesis. That's like close to apotheosis, which is pretty decent. But I don't remember what apotheosis means because I just know that the word exists. The word was created because of that. Okay, that's cool. I guess you need a name for it, right? This is the first what? What is this? This is it's a defenestration, right? My main character gets burned into a charcoal statue and thrown out a window by her daughter, who is a living flame. That's cool. Sounds very fantasy. Sounds very high concept or something. Living flame. I feel like that could be cool, right? That could be cool. Apotheosis. What does that mean? Apotheosis. Different from ataraxia, which we were talking about the other day. Apotheosis. This is like a religious thing, right? The highest point of development of something, culmination or climax. The elevation of something to divine status. Deification. So apotheosis is to slip into the divine quality, to become holy. It's like becoming God. Yeah. That's cool. I think there are like people in the world who want that, and that's scary, right? I mean, there's sort of like maybe a human impulse once we understand the divine to like become divine in some capacity. I mean, there's plenty of certainly fantasy, but other media about killing gods and like ascending to like the utmost level of power. I've thought I was God before. Because I was manic. That was cool. I have apotheosis through autopoiesis. That's poiesis. That's got to be like the writing of poetry about oneself. Auto, self, poiesis, poetry, unless it's poetry about poetry, unless it's entirely unrelated, and poiesis is not coming from the same root as poetry and poesia, and it's entirely something different. Autopoiesis refers to a system's ability to self-create, maintain, and reproduce itself, which art does kind of. You like reproduce yourself. Typically applied to living cells or organisms. Yeah, so I was way off the mark with that one. Poie. I wonder what like that root is, that etymological root. That's O-I-E. I don't see that often. The poiesis is create. To create self. So poetry is like creating. Poiesis is creating. Autopoiesis would be like a poem that wrote itself. A poem that wrote itself. That's trippy. That sounds like some high concept Chilean poetry stuff. Chileans be coming up with cool poetic things. I feel like y'all are historically pretty cool and quirky. I believe the self and the grouping of many selves is powerful. I won't use the word godlike. I won't use the word godlike. I just used it. Yeah, I mean, like, I think the grouping of people in the organization of selves is probably like the most powerful we can attain as our human selves, right? But I think no matter what, the idea is that God as an ideal and abstract thing transcends, any of that sort of fleshiness, no matter how much fleshiness you sort of glom into a ball of many flesh. And then God is still above, right? I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, in just anything, and like the ideal, the conceptual, transcends the actual, right? Even like love and the idealization of someone else, and like fantasy, extends past their existence and serves to make it like more than it is, and that's very dangerous when it comes to like the intrahuman relationships that we create. So like this is like I think an interesting question is whether there's anything worth idealizing, right? Whether ideality is ever useful. I've talked about one time I was talking about like politics with a troll on stream, and we were talking about like ideality and like whether that's useful, and I was saying that it is, right? That it can help like guide us toward the future. Like the idea, like I mean, ideation, ideality, thought, like that's a human impulse that we can't escape from. Like I think like we can never exist fully in the moment all the time. Like as much as I like maybe crave it, we can't just be like the snail, that the mollusk that goes along with its mollusky business and doesn't like self-reflect on its own existence because we're human and we've evolved the capacity to not be mollusks, that to separate ourselves from all these other animals that, as far as we can tell, don't do this thing that we do. And so the fact that we can conceptualize the future, the fact that we can conceptualize the past, things that don't exist right now, right? That's where God is born from. The fact that there can be something better, there can be something worse, there can be abstract versions of reality, and so like language is the same, right? It's this like ideal abstraction of actual things. So we need it in some capacity. It's necessary. And then, you know, I find myself historically oscillating back and forth in a very uncomfortable way between like hyper ideality and hyper reality. Not hyper reality in the sort of definition of a Baudrillard. No, a Baudelaire, a Baudrillard. I get them mixed up, understandably. French bows. Um, uh, so like throughout my life, I think I've oscillated between this like obsession with reality and actuality, and like these things like meditation and this kind of stuff, um, and like being present, and then like, but even like depression, being so like stuck in like the moment that like nothing, just like not moving, not existing, no thoughts. And then like a mania of this like hyper ideality of like I am God. I am the culmination of the human form incarnated onto earth in this moment. I will ascend past beyond the ranks of my Homo sapien brethren, and become the leader into a great new future. Um, Actual thoughts I've had in my brain in my life as like a 16-year-old. um, and scary things, you know. Very, very scary patterns of thoughts to have had, even to know that my brain is capable of believing it is God is pretty fucked up. Image in the Ubermensch, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I am the ideal form that will forge us into a queer and labelless future. uh, Sort of self-contradictory, that statement, isn't it? So I think there's probably some like rationality in trying to find some like balance between these things, or like a minimum level of ideality, because I think too much idealizing of things is bad, and this is illustrated because it's like the mind deceiving us into seeing things not the way they are. Example, a person, a romantic interest, right? When we fantasize it becomes something that they are not, and when we treat someone as something they are not, that's not like empathetic. I like empathy. I like the idea of it's like intrahuman like kindness and connection. Um, So so like fantasy ideality doesn't help with that, right? Like creating a god and placing it among men is not empathetic unless you decide that that god is empathetic and like decrees that you should be too. Like at which point you kind of circle back, and then these people are like, well, how would you get more morality without god? And it's like, well, like, I don't know, like a human impulse, like mutual, you know, I don't know. That's another interesting thing. Like, where does that come from? That desire for like mutual growth and cooperation and abundance. And maybe it's just like a hardwired thing, you know, um, that like we're naturally moral. That's a sort of like enlightenment thing, right? That humans, like a humanism, we're naturally good. Um, I'm inclined toward that. Uh, maybe it's like a skewed perspective. I'm unsure. Are humans good? What do you guys think? Are humans fundamentally good? Does evil come from like a lack of having and environmental deficits and like are people who act in evil acting in spite of like something more human inside of them? That's a that's another one of those questions. You get a lot of different answers to. I mean, maybe not. It's kind of a yes or no. I mean, don't force it into a dichotomy if you don't like it, but they don't have to exist. Like you can say there's no fundamental humans are humans are processes of causal particles bumping or something, you know. How do you define good and evil? Right. I mean, that's an issue, right? We have to start defining. I mean, that's an important question, right? That's maybe the only proper response. Um, right, because you can say like good. Oops. Um, yeah, yeah. I guess that sort of like breaks the whole thing down. Um, I mean, I can say that like everyone in their own mind has a notion of good and evil, um, as a response, and then you just say within your own conception of good and evil, do you think that humans have some fundamental inclination toward one of these things? Um, but how do I define good and evil? Well, they're also like these are like abstract, um, and maybe they don't exist. Like, well, they're like judgments. They exist, but they just exist as it pertains to like our own minds conjuring them into being. Um, right. Like there's no universal good and evil. Yeah, I'm getting there for the sake of the question. Um, so like I find um good, right, to be um I find good to be good has to do, I think. I've liked the word agency for a while. That one stuck with me for quite a few years, more than most words stick with me. Um, so good being like um, sort of like the provision of agency to others, or like the enabling others to act freely. Um, but um, or maybe like free action that doesn't well, then it's not okay, well, if I said something like good is to like is like an action, like when you apply it to actions, maybe. um oh, what a horrifying thought to open up, right? What is good, what is evil? um I'll start with evil. um And that's an action that takes away the agency of another, um, to takes away another's ability to act. It's going in a circle, because I can't just like, there has to be a caveat to like agency, because there's bad agency, like agency that steps on the agency of others is bad, right? And good is like actions that supports the agency of others, but it's sort of only if like that agency or that action isn't like also circling back to the infringing upon thing, um, which sort of leads to this strange out of solitude, which is unpleasant. I don't like that. um, but then you say like, do humans fundamentally act in a way that is like empathetic in this way of like providing agency? Like, no, right? Humans don't seem to, right? And maybe humans have an impulse that suggests to them on like a biological level that other humans are valuable, right? This is why we like love, and this is why we do communities and have families, and we don't just like wander off into the abyss of empty solitude, right? So then at that point it's not about like a fundamentally good or evil, right? It's about like there's an impulse toward good and there's an impulse towards selfishness, right? Or like the preservation of self, and then maybe good and evil are the abstractions of of this sort of impulse toward others and an impulse towards self, right? And good is the ultimate impulse toward others, the sort of self-sacrifice, the martyr, and then evil is the ultimate selfishness of the person who takes, right? That fits, I mean, a pretty comfortably within like me being raised in like a Western world, right? Um, but then so maybe my answer is like good and evil are the abstractions of the like idealized abstractions of acting in the interest of others and in one's own self-interest, right? That's my working definition of good and evil that anyone is free to challenge if you stuck around for followed that train of thought through, because that was a little bit meandering and more of the words were happening in my head than were happening in my mouth. um, Look at that. I solved morality until someone challenges it. I have something to believe in, and I can throw myself entirely into a unknowing fervor over this concept that I've constructed, and fully turn myself over to it, writing dozens and dozens of treatises on the matter to convince others into my worldview so I feel more less alone. So good being more communal interest and selfishness, and evil, yeah, which means humans are all naturally inclined toward both things, right? To go back to the original question, I mean, I answered it for myself, which is nice. You can answer differently, but to me, it seems like if I define it that way, then humans all have a good impulse in them. I do think it seems to me that there's like a biological interest in communal action, and there's a biological necessity, maybe for both, a biological necessity for self-interest, that's like feeding oneself, and then a biological necessity or impulse, evolved impulse for like communal, right? Like that seems pretty clear to me. I don't think that um uh it seems to me like pretty unchallengeable that like humans act in self-interest and humans act in communal interest, and then good and evil are like the abstract versions of these things, the idealized versions of these things, right? or something. Dogs are barking. It's funny. So I have these headphones now, and I have like the monitor so I can hear myself and what's going into the mic back through my headphones. And they have enough noise canceling that I can't hear the actual sound of the dogs barking downstairs, but I can hear through the microphone into the monitor the dogs in my ears, which is very kind of trippy, right? Like I'll hear something outside and I don't think it's because I'm hearing it through my ears. It's because I'm hearing it through the mic picking up the thing outside going monitored back. Freaky. Hi, Kazik. Thinking about a vulture waiting for a starving child to die. The vulture isn't evil. Well, yeah, I don't think this like sort of thing applies to like things that don't conceptualize of the ideal, because the good and evil are only abstract concepts created by a mind that can kind of extrapolate in this way into like perfection, right? These immutable concepts, right? So if a human like yeah, evil is humanity allowing children to starve. Evil is not a starving child. Evil is not, a worm decomposing the child. Evil is not a snail, right? A mollusk. Mollusks aren't evil. So then it raises an interesting question of like, why do I feel unhappy about the fact that I killed a snail when I was 5 years old and it sticks with me so much, right? And maybe it's this idea of like just destroying something with no need, like that detracts from maybe processes that support humans. I mean, this is like it's a fundamentally human-centered morality, what I've created. But if we go and destroy the environment and the world around us ceaselessly, right, any amount of like destroying this thing takes away from the collective pool of resources. So if it's not needed for self-interest, then it's needlessly destroying or something. Then we get to a question of like, what is need and want, and how do we draw those lines, right? Do you need something? How do we resolve needs between multiple people? And I think that's actually like sort of the political moral question that matters, right? When you have two people who both need something, what do you do, right? Because then it takes us back to the action and like useful things and whatever. How do you evaluate need, right? That's a horrifying box to open. How do you decide how much someone needs something and whether someone needs something more, right? When you need to make a decision between. I think that's why people get so interested in trolley problems, right? You have to make a decision. This is something I I love about the game Disco Elysium. You have to make decisions, and you're stared down with a choice, right? And so, there's no room for decision. Decisions, choosing between trolley problems, right? I think these are very compelling. I've been thinking again that I want to write like a visual novel, because they have this like sort of native to the medium of the visual novel is like the branching structure of decisions and choices, and you have to do something, right? You get to a point, and to move on, you have to choose one side or the other. I think this is compelling to me because I live a life where I've spent a long time like waiting and dragging my feet and not acting and not doing the things I want to do, or feeling like I'm not doing that, or like telling myself that I should be making more decisions. And that goes back to the whole intentionality and present momentary thing. I guess when you're acting without intention, you're opening yourself up to the chance for accidental immorality. like the child stepping on the snail who doesn't know. Like, that disturbs me, the idea that I can unintentionally act immorally, that I can hurt someone without knowing that I hurt them. That's like a really terrifying notion to me. um, and I think that's a pretty good argument, at least within my own brain, of like why we should act intentionally, because, well, I'm terrified of unintentionally causing suffering, because there's enough of that happens intentionally. And I don't want to intentionally cause suffering either. Okay, I'm going to read some things in chat, because, yikes. Let's see. There's so much. Wow. We were at the last time I looked at chat was Poiesis. That was a long time ago. That was like 20 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago. Like, I feel I have zero control over my inner monologue. This is you, Nikki. This is where we are in chat. Many minutes ago. That gremlin be wilding sometimes. Yeah. I mean, and maybe that's the tension, is we try to act intentionally with unintentional circumstances, where like the monologue just provides thoughts. The senses happen involuntarily, and we are fundamentally resigned to not have complete control, right? On the flip side of not being able to have complete non-control, we can't be the snail. We can't be complete control of the computer, of having, like processes that we can sort of choose from that get executed in the exact same way. Like, we're subject to chance, right? Meditation helps me so much with brain, mind, thought, autonomy, and peace and quiet and freedom. I have to meditate today. I meditated the other day, and that was really nice. This kind of talking is actually really nice for me too. Like, once we get into like these questions, it helps me unpack them, and the more I can like say the things that I kind of feel like this intuition before, and like work out these questions in my head, it helps me, and it makes me feel less hopeless, because I'm able to like verbalize these things instead of having them swirl. And I don't have many people who I can verbalize with, but like Stream, as long as there's a few people in chat, because then I'm using chat as like a conversation to like have a thought in my mind, or at least enough suspension of disbelief in my mind to say that like someone real is listening. And I think someone real is listening out of, one of you, like enough that I feel like I'm having a conversation, even though I'm just controlling the narrative and working through my thoughts. Controlling the narrative. I love that term, controlling the narrative. It's, I don't know, has very implies things. Many different things that I feel it implies. Okay. Well, that was like 2. I've tried meditation. I'm not joking when I say I can't really control it. I've seen the Will Ferrell movie Stranger Than Fiction. Y'all with the references, like, I'm getting none of the references today. But yeah, meditation can be quite terrifying. And meditation, like to be in one's own thoughts is like, ugh, If we are the poiesis of our parents, we are in ourselves poetic, poiesis, probably poietic. It's like the poem says, and you ask me. Poetry is you. Which poem? And you ask me, poetry is you. And in the way we aren't just the poiesis of our parents, we are autopoiesis, the poem that writes... Oh, the poem, the autopoietic poem. The poem that writes itself answering the poem. Or as Nicanor, I'm still not great at my rolling of R's. I can kind of do them. I have to like do a weird thing with my mouth to get them to happen. My R's roll easier when I'm in a higher pitch. Parra. And even if I go like really high, happens easier for some reason. When I'm down here, R, like the R's don't roll as well. It's interesting. That's almost like an argument in itself to exist in a headier voice. There are lots of arguments to exist in a headier voice. One is that I get perceived differently and generally more positively because my tone down here can be very like stale and monotone, and like I notice the voice I use changes my social perception, like the way that I'm perceived socially. And that's kind of like terrifying, right? I mean, it's sort of like a looks maxing, but it's like a voice maxing, and like there are these a number of social parameters that exist that the way we exist among other people affects the way that we're treated. Um, I wish that wasn't. That's sort of like a world that I idealize. A world where sort of no one is treated differently for any of their like the ways that they express themselves, but it's strictly about the things that they're expressing, right? So maybe that's the most autistic thing I've ever said. I wish for a world where no one is judged by the ways that they're expressing, but only the things that they express. That's like a right. So you can like express, gender, or that gender stops existing when everyone can express that aspect of themselves freely, or like gender becomes a strictly biological thing that doesn't affect the way that one wears clothes, or even like whatever. I don't know if that's a sort of like queer futurism. I've always been pretty interested in the genre of Afrofuturism, which is like Sun Ra was one of the first Afrofuturist musicians, but there's a lot of Afrofuturist poets. And it's like this sort of speculative genre of art that looks toward a truly free Black experience of like expression and all of that. And I've toyed with the idea in my head of like intentionally making art that exists in a space of like queer futurism, or like a non-binary futurism, like a futurism where the binary is gone, where expression is free, and it's not like placed between ideal limits that are unattainable. There's the ideality again, right? Like this is like man, right? And then you get this like looks maxing impulse toward becoming the ideal man, and you have to continually move the goalposts from like Giga Chad to Mega Chad to Giga Chad to Terra Chad, whatever, right? And then the same goes with like expressions of femininity, personally experienced through trying to be as feminine as possible, which I no longer care about, right? But also just through like just general feminine beauty standards of like having to be more beautiful. There's like maximalism. Idealism falls quickly into maximalism, I think. Anyway, or minimalism even. Okay. That's a whole ramble. Anyway, if we are the poiesis of our parents, we in of ourselves are autopoietic. So like the poem says, and you ask me, poetry is you. This way we aren't just the poiesis of our parents, we are autopoiesis, the poem that writes itself. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That's cool. I might want to look into that myself. Will Ferrell basically starts hearing his life narrated by Emma Thompson. I like to use an example of how my brain kind of works. Interesting. And I'm like, is my brain truly free, or am I just shackling it into my version of freedom? I mean, ain't that the question? I think freedom continually unfolds into new things as you pursue it. Overall, I'd say the world would be better without us. So maybe, well, the world wouldn't think about itself. The world would no longer be autopoietic. Um, um, and then you have the question of is thought that can do bad, better than no thought and like natural unfolding of things. And I think it's like it doesn't matter at that point. Like you say without us and there's no judgment and there is no better or worse. Better and worse exists because of us. Um, so if you say it's better without us, I think you have to run into some like pretty concerning um, positions maybe, right? Um, like if that's your moral stance, you're probably like it's probably hard to justify like not being an antinatalist. It's probably hard to not justify like trying to actively seek out the end of the world, um, doing like a blow up the world kind of accelerationism. um, and I don't know, maybe that's like Peter Thiel and like the this is the Moloch thing that I was talking about earlier. um, but like Peter Thiel and like the tech people who want to create like a Christo techno fascist like um you know like perfected future of like AI like transhuman. I don't even know all of it. I just know the words, the 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 sort of buzzwords of it. um, Man, I got like so far behind on chat that everyone was probably like, "Oh, we lost them." um, well, varying degrees of selfishness and selflessness. Yeah. Um, and how we apply those degrees in situation determines if the action is good or evil. I think so. I think that like makes enough sense to like work with, right? Um, I'm listening, waiting for you to catch up. I see. I guess I appreciate that not piling on, right? Uh, the pile of chat. I feel bad. No, I don't feel bad at all. It's interesting because I could respond to each of these messages with like its own 10-minute tirade. Um, and then I would never catch up, right? And this is the tricky thing, right? It's that it's that I'm not going to bring it back to the philosophical discussion. That's sort of a false equivalence. Uh, it's annoying that Gremlin never knows when to shut up, but she's decent writer, I guess. Writing, if at least if you give like the Gremlin a place to put the Gremlin's thoughts and the Gremlin's ever flowing torrent of word slop, and like maybe turn it into something that's pretty, then at least like you've done something with the Gremlin, and maybe the Gremlin gets satisfied for like 20 minutes sometimes, and that's pretty cool, right? To feed the beast until it gets hungry again. Ethics and morals is somehow the most brutal area of philosophy. It's actually insane. Yeah, because like, I mean, I think you try to define like good and evil, or you try to define good, or like some other construct of morality. Like maybe you don't use these words good and evil. I don't know. Maybe you can have like a tetrad or a triad. I wonder if there's like a moral triad where instead of fundamentally placing uh, morality on like a positive negative axis, you would create like a triangle or even like a square, um, where you could like map morality um, between these factors. um, it seems like it's pretty humanly intuitive to be like positive, negative, just based like across the world how moral and philosophic systems seem to develop. Um, That's like an interesting thought, though. I thought we could delve down. Um, I will challenge everything with a logical but imaginative nonsense that will never be put together except by a future civilization, but only that only has bits and pieces of the whole. I mean, the whole future civilization thing is tricky, right? Because like, um, chances are none of us will be remembered by a future civilization. Like just based on like the numbers of it and the amount of data and how much there is to parse, and like there's more information than ever, and more than ever like the information is not useful. um and there's like vastly more information than there is people. Like there were sort of maybe times in history where the amount of information accessible, like we can look back, well, lots of things have been lost. It's hard to say. That's sort of like a present, like a my time is different kind of fallacy, which the mind, it's interesting that the mind like does that, right? Where it's like, oh, my generation has it the worst, which, and my period of history is unique for this reason, and like the period that I am is in is special, right? um and I mean that's just another idealization that probably isn't helpful. um but then again, or back to the point, uh you know like there are like a few people, there are like a few people in each generation, right, who get remembered in that way, where we're talking about like future civilizations, right? like like we've got like a handful of like people from Greece, right? We've got like maybe a few dozen who we have like complete works of. um and then we have like fragments of like some number of people. um and like, yes, data will be better preserved than ever, but there's so much data that like there's not enough human cognition in the future to like just process everything, just because there's so much. Like you see the comments in YouTube, like YouTube short comment sections of like some historians going to be like looking back on this and like wonder like what the fuck, right? And like, and it was just some absurd random like comedy short or some TikTok, and it's like, well no, right? Just like it's viral now, but like, no. you know um like only the gold, right, gets sifted out. Also, hi Death's Head. I'm like catching up on comments, but you sent something. um I don't even think COVID will make it in the history books. Yeah, I mean, maybe as a footnote in like American policy, within American history, we'll say, of like handling shit bad. um but no, like it, I mean, like a comparable like economic recession to maybe like what happened in like 2002, and maybe there was like some big recession or market crash in like the 80s or something. But like I don't even know that. um um like probably not, right? Like a lot of modern information is kind of fragile. Yeah, encoded on cheap paper, encoded on electronic devices that won't last more than a century. Yeah, like the fact of like archiving um, digital information is very dicey, and it's like held in these servers that are also like maintained by companies in many cases. Like if YouTube goes away, and YouTube will go away, right? Um, at some point, YouTube will not last indefinitely, because nothing does. YouTube probably won't last to the end of human civilization, unless human civilization ends in like but like we'll make like technological advances where like the internet as we have it, like Web 2 or whatever, um, or like the World Wide Web will like stop being what we use. Like we'll probably create something that goes beyond that, at which point it'll all sit in like some archive to like be parsed over here and there by a historian only for the absolutely most important cultural touchstones. And most of it won't get stored probably because there's so much AI slop. Especially with AI now, it gets it gets incredibly watered down, right? Um, yeah. Okay. Where was I in catching up on the chat comments? Uh, oh, it was Callie talking about like being remembered. Um, and I think like the reality is like the random illogical nonsense just isn't the stuff that will be remembered. I think they have their scope for a fundamental good slash evil. I do have my own beliefs and thoughts. I'm interested in your own beliefs and thoughts, broken PH Meeper. uh, I think that if animals, those that are etologically like us, etologically? Ecologically like us, chimps are, they can be brutal and evil. And they don't even have those codes. Um, if at most they're like proto ethics, right? They exist more on that like impulse level, um, where they can't like maybe like self reflect in like a complex way. Um, but yeah, like anything lower than that is definitely not like to be judged ethically. Like if a dog bites someone, like it's a dog. You can argue that like within a lawful system, like maybe someone should control their dog and like that ethical burden is on them. Um, I also think it's deeply uncomfortable to own pets. I don't like that my family has them, really. It's like a really weird thing that humans do. Like have these little like you know, like creatures living in our places we live. It makes sense from like a domestication perspective. Like we don't need them anymore. Maybe there's like an emotional need though, so that's understandable. Like emotions do matter. I've written like a ton of short stories about a world I've built for most of my life. I want to write a book, but then I never do, because it's daunting, and I know I'll get bored and quit. Man, that's a sort of thought pattern that I'm very familiar with, as just in general. This this having these ambitions to do things and these like artistic uh, desires and not doing them. Um, I mean, it's like one of the big patterns of my life, and maybe that's sort of the pattern. Like I was saying earlier, this like manic depressive swinging between external, internal, ideal, real, um, even between like communal and selfish, selfless, selfish. Um, where like I will get very excited about things and start them and create them, and then I will get bored of them and find a way to destroy them. And I've done my best to avoid like or like to get rid of for the most part like the self-destructive impulse. Like I'm gonna delete the entirety of this Twitch channel and like wipe it off the internet. Like that sort of thought is definitely something that um, the way that my brain worked at times and worked when I was like an 18-year-old. And I did this with like friend groups. I was horrible. I and they're still my friends, luckily. I mean, I think that's enough to show me that like these people are my closest, best friends who I can really trust and who understand me in some way. But like I entirely cut myself off from my longest running group of friends toward the end of high school, um, and just in like this very self-destructive way because I was so focused on another thing. I'm like, oh no, friends, that's a distraction from like what I need to be doing with my life. That was a very manic decision, uh, or a rapid cycling decision. Um, yeah, and even projects, just like books. I have a novel that I have started, right? Um, you've done the two and never contacted. That sounds hard because they didn't let me go. They kept bugging me, and they would like I would like post like I would like put a recording of myself playing saxophone on the internet, so that I could, send it in for an audition because you would put things on YouTube, and my friends would comment on it, because that was like the only place they could contact me and get my attention. Um, that's actually how I ended up like kind of restoring contact with those friends. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to hear that. Um, that's the way it shook out for you. Um, I suppose there's always time, but that's not always how it works. Um, or there's always a chance to do so still, to reconnect. Um, anyway, yeah. So I've started books, and I've started role playing game systems and D&D campaigns. Creating them, and I've started projects and skills. Calligraphy is one that I dropped for poetry, even within streams. This has happened as recently as in the last couple years. Um, but I'm trying to get better at not, you know, casting these things away. Because, at the end of the day, like, one of the most important things we have to help others and to like live our lives and to act and be agent in our own existences are like the skills that we've built, the time that we've put into things, the things ultimately that like differentiate us from others, right? That differentiation is valuable. Um, and so, I play sax again, right? And I do so not as well as I used to. um, but I do it because that's a skill that I have, and I've undestroyed that thing. I've unself sabotaged that to some extent, um, and maybe there's some skill in that some like parts of that I won't get back in the same way. That like I maybe won't be as good in the same way. Um, um, but like, but I have it back. And at least maybe something I've thought of is like the things worth doing are the things that we always come back to, that we can't keep ourselves from returning to, that maybe we grow dissatisfied with them and cut them out of our life, and then we return. And that's how poetry has been for at least a couple years, which isn't an incredible amount of time for my confidence. Like maybe after 5 years, maybe after like, I mean, I've sort of quit poetry and come back. So there's some confidence that I'll keep returning. But like, I'm very happy that I'm playing saxophone again because it shows that it's something that I maybe can be somewhat confident that I'll continue to do. Um, and even just like looking at life observationally in that way, I have these habits where I cut things off. These are the things that I haven't been able to keep cut off from me. Um, that's a useful guide, right? That voice, um, or the things that the mental scalpel just can't remove. Because I've done a lot of mental scalpeling, I guess. Not always with surgical precision, unfortunately, and sometimes I have to wonder if some of the choices I made like caused permanent like damage to my brain. I mean, manic episodes, they say those permanently alter your brain function, and a manic episode that drove me to a suicide attempt, right? Like, um, I mean, it certainly burned into my cranium. So, some things are permanent, right? Death is permanent, and physical maiming and injury is permanent, and hurting other people, and like there are relationships that truly can't be mended, right? Um, choices that can't be unmade. This is why I want to create like art that revolves around choice. Um, and maybe that's why like just writing just reading poetry doesn't always do it for me as much as I like love poetry because it's a way to understand language and to look into language and like really, try to try to make language as effective and forceful as possible and as close to oneself and as expressive, right? Um, but then like something that is poetic that involves choice, a video game. I really love video games as an art form, and I think they will. I don't know. I'm excited by the fact that we live in a time where the video game is still like a burgeoning way to tell stories and isn't completed and is still developing and sort of like a wild west, you know, um, a bronze age of or like an iron age, a turning point of the way we can communicate narratives. That's cool. I'll read that comment about the D&D campaign, Sleepy Librarian, after we take a short break. Um, so I can stand up and drink water and like walk and move my body and stretch. And y'all should do those things too. And you should stop looking at the screen, the evil, all-consuming, techno color Moloch, that which you have watched consume the brightest minds of your generation. Get away from that thing. Welcome back to Imogen's Yappity Yappity Yap Fest. I'm Imogen, and let's keep yappity yapping yapping, cause I enjoy doing that, and and if I enjoy it, then I certainly have the agency and chance and ability as a, I don't know, fortunate modern individual with a stable internet connection and a good microphone to go live on the internet and like talk about these things. My D&D campaign probably only still exists and has me writing consistently because my players want to play. Community. If it was up to me, I would have stopped long ago. I need an outside force to help me / force me to do the shit I actually like to do. But my brain thinks I don't. That's very resonant. That's extremely resonant. That feels like why I'm in a band right now. Because I love playing, and I love making music, but at the same time, like, there are a lot of reasons I would leave. But at the same time, like, as much as I'm doing it for myself, I'm also doing it for the other people. And I've many times in my life stopped doing things. Prime example is D&D campaigns, because I stopped liking them, even when no one else stopped liking them. And I just stopped it and ended it and cut it off, right? That also happened around my, like, cutting off of friends era. And I'm, like, tired of doing that. And I'm fed up with quitting things and quitting on other people, or, like, stopping doing things that are gonna, like, that other people value, right? Just because, like, I have a momentary lapse of enjoyment. So I'm still in the band, and I'm gonna try to be in the band until I absolutely cannot be, and then I won't be in the band. Streaming is kind of similar, right? I think about sometimes, like, oh, just stop streaming. Like, what are you doing? Why the fuck are you, like, reading poetry on the internet, or, like, talking about poetry, or even, playing music and, like, streaming it? Like, it's so absurd and strange, and but I like doing it, right? When I do it, I like it. And it's usually when I'm not doing something and thinking about it that I have a problem with it. I'd imagine when you're actually playing, right, in the moment of the D&D campaign, you're not thinking about how much you might or might not want to quit the D&D campaign, right? Sleepy Librarian. Maybe I'm off base there, but, like, in that moment you're playing D&D and you're with your friends, and it's like, it's great. You're I don't know if you're online or in person, but you're laughing. Maybe you're eating snacks and in a room with people. Maybe you're in a Discord call, but, like, it's dope, right? And at least for me, it's like when I'm thinking about the things that I do, I find many ways to, like, destabilize them. And when I'm doing them, it's fine, right? And this is that play, I think, between action, right, doing, impulsivity, presentness, and then, like, this, like, critical mind that wants to, like, break things, basically, the mental scalpel, as discussed before, right? And, like, that's how it is with art for me a lot, is I'm doing art. When I'm writing is great. And then sometimes I stop writing, and if I'm not writing, I start thinking about why I'm not writing. And then it all just starts to collapse, because then I question, like, the sanctity of writing itself, and I wonder if it's a useful pursuit, and all the questions compiling in, right? And it's, like, the same for anything. And I think oftentimes, like, for me, the cure for the thing is, like, action. But you have to be careful to not, like, turn that into a heavy swing back and forth between, like, hyper action and hyper inaction, or hypo action. Yeah, because, like, guess what? A month later, I find out I still actually enjoy the thing. Right? Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta stick through the hard times and the moments of critique. I've been thinking about this a lot, like the idea, not necessarily a fixed rule, but just like to just not make decisions like too impulsively. Like impulse matters sometimes, but at least for like the big decisions, um, like something I think about is romance and like declaring love for someone. And historically, I've declared my love for people far, far, far more quickly than I should have, right? Which is sort of the opposite of like quitting something, but it's like starting something before it should be started rather than quitting something before it should be quitted. And like I think the brain naturally adjusts for this. Like I have some kind of like mental capacitor now that like doesn't let it happen until the it's been long enough until that's not how capacitors work. I don't know how electronics do things. Um, but like once the voltage is strong enough, type thing. And so like I think that's useful. And another thing I've heard people say like that I think is a useful idea is like to make big decisions in a good state of mind, like not when it's midnight and you're crashing out. Like that's probably the last time we should make a decision. It's usually the time when we most want to make like impulsive decisions. Is like it's like it's like 3 a.m. I'm hungry. I hate the world. I just cried. I've been watching YouTube for 3 hours, and like now I'm gonna decide to like cut off everyone in my life. Like I think that's more often when it happens, right? Um, so maybe like make a decision in front of the journal, sitting in front of a plant, outdoors in the sun, when like you're happy. um, because I think I'd rather have my happy mind be making the important decisions. Because my happy mind is the mind that I like to be in. You know, I'm like if I don't like this person right now, my own mental state, I probably shouldn't be letting them make the decisions for my like life path. And of course, like life path is a little bit beyond like D&D campaign, but D&D campaign is kind of life path. It's like your close friends. It's like those super important people. It's like I feel like D&D is like sometimes the way like like the way we get like really close to people. My closest friends are through D&D, right? Through yeah, now RPGs because we don't even play 5th edition anymore because we hate it. We played it to death. um, those of us who are super sensitive to the world are also the ones most likely to be impulsive. Yeah, and I think that's where you get like the artist impulsive like drug using addled archetype, right? The Kurt Cobain, the rock star, the Bukowski, the William Blake, right? Morphining himself to oblivion and making art, or opium, not morphine, opium. I don't know if those are the same things. I think morphine's an opiate. I think it's just the fancy word for it. I'm not sure. Um, right? We're sensitive, so we do things impulsively, or um, and like drugs and sex, those things. Those are like impulse, right? Um, dude, I cannot tell you how many things in my life have just blown up. Yeah, yeah. I've I've definitely done a lot of like blowing up things in my own life. I feel like most of my problems have been caused by myself. Um, that's pretty uh pretty wild. I'm being asked if I want lunch. I think I would rather make my own food. Okay, that was a good decision. That was a yeah, my level up phone text sound. Yeah, little my little beeps and boops. I love this thing. My flip phone makes a sound when I open it. Like that's such a nonsensical thing. I want to unlock my phone, and if the volume is on, it like makes a sound. Wow. It's like, hey everyone, I'm using my phone right now. I wish all phones did that, where it would physically announce to the world like, hey, I am loudly on my phone right now. Um, I hate when people are on their phones and I'm in proximity to them. uh, one of my I feel like it's something that happened recently that I maybe mentioned a few times on stream that might just become like a real core memory. Classrooms would be a mess. Yeah, but like I almost feel like a little moment of shame opening this thing when someone else is around because they know I'm on my phone and I'm not listening to them. And maybe it's not enough for like um, the generation after me. They just don't, maybe they just don't care, and that's understandable and fine. But classrooms are already a mess. you know, um, uh, just like whatever. I have this like core memory now that's just lives in my brain all the time. Of I was in the car with my band, a few of my band members after band practice. We're sitting there, we're hanging out. We had gotten food, and the other three people in the car pull out their phones and are looking at like TikTok or Reels, right? And I'm sitting there, obviously unable to join in on like the collective rot sesh. I'm just like sitting there, like, and at a certain point, I just gave up and I started looking over the shoulder of one of my friends, and I just felt like so stupid for sitting there, like watching TikTok with someone, right? Um, and I'm like what the fuck? Like how do how did this happen? How did we get here that like socializing and like community is so broken that we like sit there collectively on our phones? It's scary. I've gotten in the habit to walk down to my bathroom and splash myself in the face. That's good. That's a good way to like snap back to the body, right? When the mind gets too much, the things that bring us back to the body, the breath. Um, for a while, for me, like sometimes I would just, um, we have a pool in our backyard. Many homes in Las Vegas have pools, a very common thing here. Um, I would just go and it would be like midnight. And I'd be like, I am having like a manic episode and like rolling around in my bed with like voices in my head. I'm going to jump in the pool. It is cold out. It is not summer. And I'm going to like destroy the thoughts in my brain for a moment because the cold of the water will like cut through it all. I think this is like the logic behind the cold plunge. Is and it works. It like really just like wires you. You're like, I'm in the body, you know. Um, and yeah, meditation doesn't work because I have chronic migraines, so I just sit down in pain. Yeah, I mean, something that puts you present with the body and the mind is probably not super helpful when like the body and mind are like in agony. Um, I think migraines are agonizing having having some migraine experience. Will hopefully not get more in my life. My mom has them, and I know they can be sort of hereditary. So hopefully, maintaining a healthy body and mind. Like I've only gotten like bad migraines a few times in my life. One time I had one end stream, just like showed up, and I'm like I like broke in the middle of a sentence, and then it was like, oh, that's an aura. Oh, that's a migraine. Oh, I'm dying. You know, my notification tone is called glitter. It just beeps and boops, all sassy. Like hell yeah. I started setting an alarm again, and it goes off at 6 a.m. and I don't know what the alarm is called. It's one of the it's one of the Apple ones, and on my computer, and I just love it. I love the sound of it. which most of them I hate. They're so awful. They don't sound nice. Um, and there was a period in my life when I did alarms and I had it be a song that I really liked. Um, and it really was and is kind of one of my favorite songs, but I stopped using that alarm about like a year and change ago, maybe 2 years ago, I don't know. Probably 2 years ago. And I still can't like listen to that song because it still makes me think of like the thing that woke me up in the morning every day at college. Um, so I still need some time for that to like reset. But the one that I set on my computer is like really nice. It's kind of ambient like in the sound, but it has enough going on. It kind of makes me think of like the extreme watered down version of the kind of music that I like to make, and maybe that's why I like it. That it has this kind of floating ethereal feel. Um, so that's nice. I should start setting alarms too. I think that kind of consistency is like useful for the body and mind if you can make it happen, right? Um, the issue I've been running into is like I want to wake up at the same time in the morning early because I love the morning and I get shit done in the morning. And then I'll have like things that I have to do where I have to stay out late, primarily punk shows. And then I like have all this energy and I can't sleep after the punk show. And then I stay up very late and it blows up the entire sleep schedule for like the next 4 days. And then I get it handled again. Like today I have the sleep schedule handled. It's Wednesday. We have a show on Friday, right? Um, but I've acquired melatonin and I'm going to start taking that and hopefully that helps me sleep after the shows. Because God, I love sleeping and I love sleeping well and waking up in the morning not hating my life. uh, One of my songs is called Little Miss Too Much, and it's about the feeling of not being able to control ourselves. The first verse is woke up to voices in her head, heart like clockwork in her chest. Oh, these are like lyrics that you've written. That's cool. She left lipstick on his pillow, doing the thing that she does best. Says she doesn't mean destruction, but seems destroying all she knows. And anytime she tries to bloom, brambles all she grows. That's pretty dope. Song lyrics. I have not figured out how to write song lyrics, or I mean maybe it's just because I don't sing that much and I want to be able to sing and like just sing songs and like kind of have that impulse. Something I'm figuring out. Um, but like those sound like lyrics. They sound like they work. I wonder what kind of music that would go with. Woke up to voices in her head, heart like clockwork. You could put it on. You put it over like Radiohead type stuff. Like this like clockwork head. Like there's some of that kind of like poetic looseness there. Or it could just be like very like fucking Riot Girl kind of punk, you know. Has Manic Pixie Punk sound in my head. Yeah, yeah. Um, Start with ballads. It makes sense. I think you mean ballads. I think it's just an extra N, an extraneous N. Um, that makes sense, right? Slower. Start slow. Generally a good musical advice in situation. I did my fingers are fat. Understandable. uh, oh, a yawn. A yawn has emerged. Uh, and I think I might end the stream here. Um, it's a nice thing to just talk. Um, because these are the questions that like the stuff that we were talking about, all the morality stuff and all the how to act and how to do anything and like this idea of choice. Those are all the questions that truly like if I don't verbalize them to people, um, they like culminate and they tear at me because they like float around my head, and I forget that I kind of have answers and I have spent time answering these questions before, and reverbalizing them and saying them again and like processing them, right? It helps with that kind of confidence, um, working them out again, because I forget things, I guess. And yeah, I don't know if that means like it might be a sort of like healthy thing to do to have like a regular yapping stream. It's probably more healthy to just like have friends who I can yap to about stuff and like talk at length about these things, which I don't totally, but I'm making friends more than uh more than I have been. So yeah, like stream, like yeah, I'm gonna use like a streaming on the internet to strangers as my way to I don't know like it's sort of a very like antisocial way to to socialize and verbalize one's problems, but it works. And it's like one thing is it's like more comfortable, and I do think there's a lot of merit in doing the uncomfortable thing and like talking to people face to face about things that go beyond like the vapid daily realities. um because I don't think I've had like a many like deep yaps with people. I don't have them very often, and if I did more, but it's hard to like intentionally create that situation um where one can just like talk and like philosophize at length. And like most people, I mean, I think there are probably more people than one would think who are like down for that, especially in like the circles I fly in of like queer leftist artists. Like this is the demographic of people who likes to hear their own voice, right? um, so that's something I've been thinking about too, right? Because stream is not like an incredibly functional. I mean, it's functional. It works. It's just not the best it could be. It's not. It's not. And there's no eyes to look into other than my eyes, and my eyes are my eyes, and realize. As a straight white guy, I don't know. I mean, fair. Uh, um, fair enough. Um, oops. At least that didn't break anything. Well, you can take it on my word that that leftists, artists, queer people, the culmination of these things, uh, or the comorbidity of those factors, tends to result in, you know, the symptom of talking a lot. Talking a lot. At least I do it. At least I can yap for 2 hours on a live stream. Um, strange thing, strange thing to do. Strange thing to do. Try posting, dude. Automod. So I added like the moderation bot or whatever, and maybe I don't need it because if I just have the server set to be invite only, which as long as there are no links floating around, no one can get into the Discord without someone directly inviting them to it, which someone can do like from chat, you know. Like, let me see. So I'm just gonna get rid of this thing. uh, Getting rid of the moderation bot. I used it to help me like delete things and clear stuff out. Don't need it anymore. Yeah. Um, anyway, Anyway, bots usually love me. uh, yeah. So like the Discord server getting hate rated can only happen if people can get into the Discord server, right? And if people can only get into the Discord server by coming into chat and then like asking for the Discord link, it can at least be like, oh, does this person seem like usually people just won't hate rate if they need to go through that effort, and it can be like, why is this person just joining and then the first thing they ask for is the Discord link? Usually those people are less trustworthy. Um, so so then like the auto mod doesn't really need to be there because then the server is just people we know won't fuck it up, right? Um, yeah, the internet cooks up some pretty fucking crazy stuff in terms of those gifts that the bots were spamming. Um, yeah, those pretty whack. Couldn't do that for the life of me. I can barely talk for 2 minutes. See, you see, I thought so too, and maybe I was worse at it when I like started streaming. Uh, like it's definitely like a practice thing to just be able to talk out loud. I think it's a useful skill, like probably a useful skill as a poet, right? You were knocked out of the sax music. That's great. It's really annoying. I was cooking such a good loop on the second one yesterday, uh, and then the people had to come hate rate it. I had to deal with it, and I lost the loop. The whole like water thing I was doing, the ocean. I mean, the poetry on that part subpar, but the loop itself with like the breathing, like the wind kind of sound and like the crackliness of it, uh, loved that. I also this morning I got Ableton working, which means I can start putting the saxophone through effects, and I can do like distortion and reverb and delay and stuff, and then I can like just you know saxophone overdrive pedal like sounds, um, which which is very exciting. I need to figure out how to use all that stuff and like make that work. But that's exciting, and I don't think that will crop up on the live streams anytime soon because that's stuff I would need to like play with on my own time and get comfortable with. But if I can like have play the saxophone and have the effects in Ableton's audio software you can use to do stuff like this. If I can have it sound like I'm in like a tunnel, right, echoing, or like a giant hall, and it's like making that wash of sound, that's something I'm very attractive to, because then I have to do a little less to like really um, fill all that space. Because the saxophone, you're either blowing a note or you're not. You don't even get this sort of like piano sustain that you can do, or like a string instrument kind of ringing out. Saxophone doesn't do that. It's very like you know. So having reverb, having echo, having delay, these things are quite compelling for all of that, and that'll eventually crop up. So there will be more saxophone music today. Today I almost did this stream as I was just gonna like play saxophone, but that seemed kind of like nihilistic, because I had said on the Monday stream that I wanted to like have a stream and talk about stuff and like um, unpack things, and like a lot of the stuff today is like the thoughts that drove me to like the sort of mental breakdown on stream on Monday. Um, Obviously in like a much more stable place today. Um, but I didn't just want to be like, okay, I'm gonna play music and like ignore that. So this was good, and there'll be another music stream soon, maybe as soon as tomorrow. I really like doing it, but I think tomorrow I'm like doing stuff. I'm supposed to be doing stuff today, but I'm like high key not gonna go. I don't know. Maybe I'll be able to get a ride down there. There's like a protest happening downtown that's like to protest the fact that there's like these traffic surveillance cameras that have been installed all over the city that are like that across the country have been making false arrests and shit. Um, and like I want to go to that protest so I can like kick it with the Democratic Socialist folks because I think they're cool and I want to know those people more. Um, you know, they could be anarchists, but they could be the anarchists seem to be chiller than the Democratic Social. Like I don't know. They're 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 all cool though. Need more leftist unity, right? Um, anyway, might be going to that, might not. Might just be staying home and like taking care of myself. Because I didn't sleep that much last night as a way to enact the sleep cycle reset. Maybe I'll read because I haven't read in a while, or I'll meditate or something. Meditate so I can flex on y'all who can't meditate, because life is best lived as a series of actions taken to show others that we can do things that they can't. That was sarcastic. You feel flexed on? Good. No, no, no. Everyone is different and has different physical and mental abilities, capacities, capabilities. And meditating is not an easy thing. Not an easy thing. Yeah. Well, that's the rub. That's a wrap. That's the end. Fiend. The curtain call, the closing chord, the concluding word that starts with a C. Het eind. I guess that's probably like Dutch or something. Het eind. Is it einde? Eind, or is it eind? Yeah, laughing at me because I'm so wrong. Uh, yeah, just yeah, yeah. Chat with delay. Yeah. Einde, het einde. Okay, like ende, end, het einde, het einde. Keep making art you love, het einde.